The morning sun barely touched the edges of the military base, casting long shadows across the parade ground. Rows of soldiers stood at rigid attention, their polished boots reflecting the cold light. Somewhere in the distance, the base commander's voice barked orders, sharp as a whip. "Hey, real quick, comment your city below." I'm always amazed by how many places these stories reach. And if you're into true stories with real emotion, make sure you're subscribed. Captain Harper Raines stood at the back, arms folded, watching the soldiers with a calm precision that belied the storm inside her. She had been through operations that no one outside the Navy could even imagine: hostage rescues, high-risk extractions, covert missions in the dead of night. Yet here she was, in a room full of young, eager faces, trying to enforce discipline. In a world that sometimes forgot her worth, her calm was interrupted by the sudden, thundering approach of Commander Mason Drake. His boots slammed against the concrete as he marched toward her, face twisted in a mix of frustration and entitlement. The commander was notorious for his short temper, especially when someone dared to challenge his authority. And today, apparently, Harper had. "You think you're special just because of your history?" Drake sneered, stepping uncomfortably close. "This is my ceremony, and I won't have you undermining me in front of 1,000 soldiers." Harper didn't flinch. Her mind raced not with fear, but with strategy. She knew what kind of man Drake was, how dangerous it could be when someone like him felt threatened. "I'm not here to undermine you, sir," she replied evenly, her voice cutting through the growing tension. "I'm here to uphold the standards that make this unit the best. Don't forget why people respect the Navy." The commander's face darkened. Anger flared. "You need to learn your place," he hissed. Without warning, Drake swung a fist toward Harper's jaw, a move reckless, unprofessional, and utterly foolish. Harper barely moved, instinct and muscle memory from years of SEAL training taking over. In one fluid motion, she dodged, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. With a controlled yet powerful strike, she countered. Time seemed to slow as the commander's expression shifted from fury to shock before he crumpled to the ground, unconscious, right there in front of the assembled soldiers. Gasps filled the air. Soldiers blinked, unsure if what they had just seen was real. Some instinctively stepped back. Others froze, captivated by a display of raw skill and precision. Harper stood over Drake, her chest rising and falling steadily. Not a word wasted. "You all saw it," she said, voice ringing with authority and a hint of steel. "This isn't about ego. It's about respect. And respect is earned, not demanded." Whispers rippled through the ranks. Some were terrified. Some were inspired. And somewhere in the back, a young private whispered under his breath, eyes wide, "She's a SEAL." Harper didn't give them time to process. She straightened her uniform, her eyes scanning the crowd, knowing that every soldier had just witnessed a lesson they'd never forget. But as she looked down at Drake's unconscious form, a twinge of unease flickered across her mind. Actions like these, even when justified, had consequences. And someone as powerful as Drake would not forget this moment anytime soon. Harper turned toward the formation, took a deep breath, and prepared to finish the ceremony. Every soldier's gaze locked on her. In that instant, she wasn't just a woman in uniform, she was a force of nature. A reminder that courage and skill transcended rank, gender, and expectation. Yet beneath the calm, the storm was only beginning. The crowd was silent. Every soldier frozen in the weight of what had just happened. The fallen commander lay sprawled on the polished parade ground, a shocking reminder that authority could be challenged and toppled in an instant. Harper's mind, however, was already 3 steps ahead. She had no time for hesitation. In the Navy SEALs, hesitation could be fatal, and Harper had learned long ago that the smallest delay could escalate disaster. "Secure the area," she commanded, her voice cutting through the stunned murmurs. 2 soldiers hesitated, but then rushed forward to help Drake, ensuring he wouldn't suffer permanent injury. Harper's eyes scanned the formation. Many faces were pale. Some were whispering fervently. The respect in their eyes was undeniable, but so was the fear. A young lieutenant approached her, nervously adjusting his cap. "Ma'am, what happens now?" Harper exhaled slowly. She had anticipated this question. "Now, we maintain order," she said firmly. "We continue the ceremony, but everyone remembers one thing. Professionalism doesn't come from rank alone. It comes from competence, integrity, and courage. Never forget that." Even as the ceremony continued, Harper could sense the undercurrent of tension. Rumors and whispers would spread quickly across the base, and not all would be favorable. Drake was not just a commander. He was influential, connected, and known for retaliation. But Harper had a secret weapon that no one in that field could match: her reputation and experience as a Navy SEAL. After the ceremony, Harper walked through the crowd, her uniform immaculate, her expression unreadable. Soldiers stepped aside, some bowing their heads respectfully, others stealing glances of awe. She caught the eye of a young private who had been closest to the confrontation. He swallowed hard and whispered, almost to himself, "She's unstoppable." Back in the command center, the tension escalated. Drake had been moved to a secure medical area, and officers were already debating what to do. Some argued that Harper should face disciplinary action. After all, striking a superior, even in self-defense, was unprecedented. Others argued she had acted in the interest of the unit and its safety, and the proof was there in the reactions of 1,000 witnesses. Meanwhile, Harper didn't linger on politics. She returned to her quarters, where the weight of the day finally pressed down on her. Years of service, countless missions, and endless sacrifices had led to this moment, not just a clash of authority, but a test of her resolve. She poured herself a cup of black coffee, staring at the metal rack in her room. Among them, her silver star gleamed quietly. Her thoughts drifted to the men and women she had trained. She knew what it meant to fight for respect in a world dominated by ego and hierarchy. And now, she had proven that courage, skill, and principle could outshine even the most rigid chains of command. But Harper also knew the battle wasn't over. Drake would not take this lightly. Whispers of revenge, of a smear campaign, of backroom politics would follow her for months. She had faced worse in combat, but the battlefield of authority and pride was unpredictable. Her phone buzzed, a secure message from a former SEAL mentor, someone who had taught her to always expect the unexpected. The message was simple, yet ominous. "You've made your mark. But remember, storms come after lightning." Harper set the phone down, her jaw tightening. She had stood her ground, but the war of respect, influence, and survival was far from over. And deep inside, a small smile curved her lips, because storms, after all, were where she thrived. The following morning, the base was a storm disguised as calm. Soldiers moved with mechanical precision, their eyes flicking to Harper as she walked the halls. Whispers clung to the air like smoke, each one carrying fragments of the confrontation. She knocked him out. In front of everyone? "Did you see that?" A SEAL took him down. Harper didn't respond. She had learned early in life that rumors had their own momentum, unstoppable, and often reckless. What mattered was control and perception. In the command office, high-ranking officials were in heated discussion. Some wanted Drake punished for his assault on Harper. Others were concerned that Harper's actions, though technically self-defense, could set a dangerous precedent. And then there was Drake himself, now awake but humiliated, nursing his pride more than any physical injury. He glared at Harper when she entered the room. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" He spat, his voice tight with barely contained rage. "You've humiliated me in front of 1,000 soldiers. Harper's eyes were ice. "I defended myself," she said simply. "You threw the first punch. Every soldier here saw the truth. I don't regret it." Drake's jaw clenched, his face reddening. "Truth? You'll see how the system protects men like me. You'll regret this." Harper allowed herself a small, controlled smile. "I've faced worse than threats, Commander. And I survived. That evening, Harper returned to her quarters, the weight of the day pressing down. She pored over reports, drills, and personnel files, a habit she had developed over years of preparation. But tonight, her mind wandered to the human side of the story, the young soldiers who had watched the battle of authority unfold before their eyes. Some would be inspired, yes, but some would fear the consequences of standing up. Then her phone vibrated. Another secure message. This one was from an unexpected source, a whistleblower within the chain of command who had long admired Harper's integrity. "He's planning something," the message read. "Prepare. You won't fight alone." Harper's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with anticipation. The coming days would not just test her physical skill, they would challenge her intellect, her patience, and her moral compass. And in that challenge, she would find the true measure of her strength. Over the next week, the whispers turned into organized resistance. Drake began planting seeds of doubt among the ranks, trying to frame Harper's actions as reckless. But Harper was ready. She called discreet meetings with officers who respected her, gathering their loyalty quietly, reinforcing the message that integrity and courage were the true measures of leadership. The tension reached a breaking point during the base's weekly briefing. Soldiers gathered in the main hall, the same place where Drake had met his public defeat. The commander attempted to reclaim authority with a speech designed to intimidate and control, but Harper stepped forward. "You want to lead by fear," she said, voice calm but carrying through the hall. "But leadership isn't earned by intimidation. It's earned by action, by integrity, and by standing for what's right even when it's hard. Every one of you knows the truth of what happened here. And if you forget, I will remind you every day until respect is mutual." A ripple ran through the crowd. Soldiers glanced at each other, nodding subtly, acknowledging her words without needing to speak. Some felt relief. Others felt pride. Harper's presence alone had shifted the atmosphere. The hall was no longer a place of tension, but a proving ground for the values she embodied. And somewhere in the back, Drake clenched his fists. He had underestimated her. He had assumed that authority alone would silence the woman who had taken him down. But he was learning the hard truth. Courage and skill were not bound by rank. Harper, however, wasn't done. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her eyes scanned the hall, landing briefly on the faces of young soldiers who had been unsure, frightened, inspired, sometimes all at once. She had shown them that standing up for oneself was not rebellion, it was duty. And as the crowd dispersed, Harper felt a subtle shift. This battle, this storm, was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a quiet confidence. She was ready for whatever came next. Days turned into a tense week. Every corner of the base carried whispers. Eyes followed Harper wherever she went. And Drake's humiliation had festered into something far more dangerous than simple anger. He had power, connections, and influence that could make life difficult for anyone, even a Navy SEAL. But Harper wasn't one to back down. She trained, she planned, and she observed. Every interaction, every decision was measured. She had learned long ago that battles weren't won by brute force alone. They required strategy, patience, and timing. One afternoon, a coded message arrived at Harper's secure line. "They've escalated. He's moving against you. Be ready." The words were simple, but the implication was clear. Drake had begun orchestrating a personal attack, leveraging rules, regulations, and allies to corner Harper. Yet she didn't flinch. She wasn't just defending herself. She was defending the very principle that had guided her life, integrity above all. The day of the decisive confrontation arrived. The base had called a special council, a gathering of all senior officers, supposedly to review leadership conduct. Harper entered the room with calm authority, her uniform pristine, her presence commanding. Across the room, Drake sat smugly, expecting fear or submission. "You're late," he sneered, his tone dripping with mockery. "I arrived when I needed to," Harper replied evenly. Her eyes locked on his, unwavering. Showing neither anger nor fear, just focus, Drake tried to rally support, calling on officers to question her actions, to paint her as reckless. But Harper had anticipated this. With quiet precision, she outlined the sequence of events: his unprovoked assault, the action she took in self-defense, and the reactions of the soldiers who had witnessed everything firsthand. She spoke calmly, yet with undeniable authority, presenting evidence, testimonials, and operational records that no one could dispute. A murmur ran through the room. Slowly, Harper's meticulous preparation dismantled Drake's attempts at manipulation. Each argument he made, she countered not with anger, but with fact and clarity. Finally, Drake, growing desperate, rose abruptly. "This isn't over," he barked. "You'll pay for this. No one humbles me." Harper stood, her expression deadly calm. "I've already paid my dues in far worse situations than this, Commander. Don't forget I'm a Navy SEAL." Before he could react, Harper executed a swift, controlled takedown, not a strike to harm, but a precise immobilization, demonstrating her skill and leaving Drake completely subdued. The room went silent. The officers stared, a mix of shock and awe on their faces. The point was not violence, it was undeniable competence, a demonstration that authority without integrity was meaningless. Harper stepped back, adjusting her uniform. Leadership is earned, not demanded. Respect is given to those who show courage, competence, and honor. Not through intimidation, not through fear, and certainly not through fists. The council adjourned, Drake humiliated, and Harper's reputation cemented. The soldiers outside whispered her name with newfound respect. Her story, her actions, became a lesson that would echo through the base for years. Alone later that evening, Harper allowed herself a quiet moment. She looked at the medals on her chest, not for pride, but as a reminder of what she had survived and achieved. She had faced danger in combat zones, yet this standing her ground against institutional arrogance and malevolent authority was equally perilous. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Another secure message flashed. "You've done what few could. But the fight for integrity is never over." Harper smiled faintly. She had won today, but she knew life as a Navy SEAL had always been about the next challenge. And whatever storms came next, she would meet them head-on, calm, precise. An unstoppable dot the next morning, the base felt different. The air was lighter, though tension still lingered in quiet corners. Soldiers whispered in hushed tones, some nodding in silent respect as Harper passed. She didn't need accolades. Her presence alone carried authority. Drake had been reassigned under administrative review, his pride bruised beyond repair. For Harper, it wasn't about revenge. It was about setting the record straight, about proving that integrity, skill, and courage mattered more than rank or ego. Harper walked across the parade ground, watching soldiers drill with precision. She recognized faces that had witnessed her confrontation, faces still reflecting awe, respect, and a hint of inspiration. These were the young soldiers who would carry the lesson forward. Authority could be challenged with honor. Courage could shine through fear. Respect was earned, not demanded. A small group of recruits approached hesitantly. One, a young private named Lucas, stepped forward, voice barely audible. "Ma'am, thank you for showing us." Harper smiled faintly, nodding. "Remember this. It's not about me. It's about what you do when no one is looking, about what you stand for even when it's difficult. That's what makes a true leader." Lucas's eyes shone with determination. Harper saw hope there, the spark of resilience, courage, and understanding. She knew that if even a few of these soldiers carried this lesson with them, the culture of the base would change forever. Later, alone in her quarters, Harper reflected on the past week. The confrontation, the whispers, the council, everything had tested her in ways that went beyond physical skill. Leadership wasn't about fists or medals. It was about integrity, decisiveness, and calm in the face of chaos. She poured herself a cup of coffee, looking out at the horizon where the sun began to rise over the base. The day was quiet, yet charged with potential. Somewhere in the distance, The echo of marching boots reminded her that life as a Navy SEAL and as a woman in command would always involve challenges. But Harper was ready for them all. A secure message blinked on her device. Your actions inspire more than you know. The storm passed, but your courage will echo for years. Harper allowed herself a deep breath, a rare moment of peace. She had faced the storm, stood her ground, and emerged not just victorious, but respected, remembered, and unbroken. And in that moment, she knew one truth above all: courage, skill, and honor were timeless. As she straightened her uniform one last time and stepped out onto the parade ground, the soldiers there instinctively fell silent. Her presence alone commanded respect, a living lesson that authority was never given lightly, and courage was always remembered. Harper's story that day would not be forgotten. It was a story of strength, of integrity, and of the quiet power of someone who had earned every ounce of respect on her terms, in her own way, and with unshakable resolve. That's the end of today's story, but I hope it stays with you for a while. If something in it spoke to you, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and share your thoughts. It's your comments that keep me inspired to make the next one.